Come on up. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. Today, we're here to announce our city's latest step in advancing a clean energy future and economic opportunities for residents. And joining me in this announcement are Commissioner of the Department of Assets and Information, Sandra Blakemore, Chief Sustainability Officer, Angela Tovar, and ComEd CEO, Gil Quinones. I am pleased to announce that today an ordinance was introduced to City Council that will establish a nation-leading franchise agreement and energy equity agreement with ComEd. These agreements, which will be fully vetted by the City Council, are critical steps forward in our work to ensure the ongoing reliability of Chicago's electricity grid, as well as accelerate an equitable transition to a clean energy economy in all 77 communities. Notably, this franchise agreement hasn't been renegotiated with ComEd in 30 years. And the current status quo from 30 years ago is woefully insufficient to meet today's needs for equity and inclusion that our residents desperately need and depend upon. And that's before the original term of the agreement expired. That's why before the original term of the agreement expired at the end of 2022, my administration chose to take that moment as an opportunity to pursue the best agreement possible for our residents while also enhancing local benefits and accountability with our electric utility. And one of the first steps that we took was in 2021 when we conducted a public request for information process to evaluate alternative providers. And we received 14 responses to that RFI, but only one of them, after careful evaluation, met our needs. Due to ComEd's competitive bid, compared to the responses we received, we determined that we would resume negotiations with the company. And since then, my team, with the assistance of outside counsel, have been hard at work to negotiate the strongest possible municipal utility franchise agreement in the country. And of course, we surveyed best practices from across the country to make sure that we are going to be leading and making sure that we bring responsive relief to our residents when it comes to the delivery of electricity in the city of Chicago. And that proposal was what was introduced to the City Council today. As I mentioned previously, this is a twofold set of agreements. The first part is a franchise agreement that grants ComEd the continued right to provide electricity and to use the public right-of-way. And the second part is a first-of-its-kind energy and equity agreement, or EEA, that establishes environmental, social, economic objectives that ComEd and the city will pursue together. These two agreements are significant, and what we've achieved for residents within them is unparalleled in comparison to other initiatives around the country. And let me give you a few details about it. For starters, this new agreement includes up to $120 million in ComEd shareholder funds and no cost to ratepayers to support local climate initiatives that are aligned with our 2022 Climate Action Plan. And I want to emphasize again, these are shareholder dollars. They will not cost the ratepayers a single penny. The funds are intended to help realize community climate priorities and will fund efforts like weatherizing and retrofitting homes for low-income residents to drive down electricity consumption and increase cost savings, creating community solar projects, equitably expanding electric vehicle or EV charging, and electric bike uptakes in neighborhoods, and so much more. On top of this, ComEd has also agreed to jointly pursue up to $400 million in federal, state, and other funding to advance an equitable clean energy transition for our residents and our businesses. This agreement will also catalyze a number of initiatives and efforts aimed at making our communities more economically and environmentally resilient. This includes a commitment to train more than 10,000 Chicagoans for careers in the clean energy sector through a new $32.5 million West Side Clean Energy Training Hub. Up to 4,000 rooftop solar installations for low-income residents, expanded workforce development programs like Construct, which will help train residents for good-paying jobs in construction-related fields with a focus on diversifying those industries and unlocking the potential of each of our communities. An expanded Chicago Builds program for CPS juniors and seniors interested in construction careers. Access to affordable broadband for thousands of residents from internet service providers using ComEd dark fiber. A commitment to hire over 1,000 South and West Side residents in specific roles at ComEd, along with strong MBE and WBE goals. And meaningful improvements in transparency, data reporting, coordination, and local accountability with the utility. Through each of these efforts, we will ensure that our city's partnership with ComEd reaps equitable outcomes and benefits for our residents for the duration of the franchise and EEA agreements. Unlike the previous franchise agreement, which had a 28-year minimum term like those of most cities, the proposed term for this agreement is much shorter, at 15 years. The city also has the right to terminate the agreement by municipalizing or acquiring and operating the system at any time after the first 5 years, and can extend the term by an additional 5 years. So let me be clear. The city cannot and will not set electricity rates for ratepayers, which are regulated by the Illinois Commerce Commission, or ICC. As many of you know, ComEd just filed their multi-year grid and rate plan filing at the ICC, and it can be reviewed over the course of this year in an ICC case. We have done, under my leadership, the city will continue to be a firm advocate for our residents in that ICC case, alongside other leaders like the Illinois Attorney General's Office, the City Citizens Utility Board, and other consumer advocates. We will make sure that we hold ComEd accountable at the ICC to make sure that they are giving fair rates to our customers, their customers, and our residents, and also particularly looking out for low-income residents. We will also ensure that every penny the company is seeking is necessary and cost-effective, as well as do our part to make sure that rates are affordable. No secrets here. We've been in these rate cases for years, and we're continuing to do so, as is our right, but importantly, I think our obligation on behalf of residents in the city. All this is to say, nothing in this agreement today will change our focus on accountability and affordability. We look forward to reviewing ComEd's future plans regarding low-income rate structure that they are now mandated by the ICC to create. And once again, folks, the agreement that we put before the City Council on behalf of our residents is truly historic. And I am confident that when the City Council has the opportunity to actually review the details of the agreement, and frankly not just rely upon media accounts, that we will have a majority who embrace this agreement because they understand that we are doing right by our residents. We're creating jobs, we're creating opportunity, and we're creating environmental benefits that will inure to the benefit of our residents for years and years to come. So together with members of the City Council, we can and will do the following. Assure an adequate, safe, and reliable supply of electricity for residents. Prepare our electric system to be resilient in the face of climate threats and equitably reduce energy cost burdens facing our residents. Promote a clean energy future for all by bringing the benefits of energy efficiency, affordability, and carbon-free transportation options to residents. And work to expand workforce and economic opportunities for Chicagoans in a clean energy economy, which is a special focus on residents who are at the front lines of the climate crisis. Now, next you'll hear from ComEd CEO Gil Quinones, and then we'll take your questions.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. My name is Gil Quinones. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of ComEd. I came from New York. I used to work the first 16 years of my career. I worked at Consolidated Edison Company of New York, which is the cousin utility of ComEd. I then worked for Mayor Bloomberg as his Senior Vice President of Energy and Telecommunications right after 9/11 to help in the rebuilding of the city of New York, and then joined the New York State Power Authority for 14 years, the largest state-owned electric utility in the United States, and I was the Chief Executive Officer there for 10 years. It's an honor to be here today for this historic announcement. ComEd is proud of our century-long history with the city of Chicago. We're equally proud to be providing the most reliable service ever in that history and some of the lowest average monthly bills in the nation to the people who call Chicago home and the businesses that drive Chicago's economy. The agreements we're announcing today, a new franchise with the city and a groundbreaking energy and equity agreement, are a win-win for Chicago and its residents. Together, they will help advance the city's ambitious climate action plan and invest in an equitable transition to a cleaner, healthier energy future for Chicago. In addition to improving access to cleaner energy for all, these agreements expand workforce development initiatives, including in under-resourced communities, to grow the local clean energy workforce in Chicago. They expand clean transportation options to help ensure residents can tap into the environmental and economic benefits of electric vehicles. These agreements provide tools that empower Chicago families and businesses to reduce their energy use and save money on their bills. And they enable ComEd to continue to provide the industry-leading service that our customers who live and work here depend on. The Energy and Equity Agreement supports the city's goals of clean energy, cleaner air, and a healthy environment for all Chicago residents and communities. It invests in growing renewable energy, and it accelerates the electrification of transportation so that as many Chicagoans as possible can enjoy the benefits of new energy technologies. As the mayor has said, it provides the funding of a new nonprofit entity that will invest up to $120 million in neighborhood projects for a clean and equitable energy future. This will be paid for using shareholder, not customer funds. There are many, many examples of the ways these robust agreements will help address the climate crisis and public health needs, put Chicagoans to work, address affordability issues, and ensure transparency. I'd like to highlight just a few. We will seek approval to build a $32.5 million clean energy training hub in Chicago's West Side, where 10,000 residents will train and reskill for careers at ComEd or other companies supporting the clean energy transition. Each year of the agreement, 35% of new entry-level field trade roles and 20% of new customer service roles at ComEd will be filled by Chicago residents from under-resourced communities, a total of about 1,000 jobs expected over the term. We will invest $24 million in energy efficiency weatherization to lower energy usage and lower energy costs for single-family and multi-unit households in under-resourced communities. We will access state funding to place rooftop solar on a total of up to 4,000 homes of low-income residents over the term at no cost to customers through the Illinois Solar for All program. And through a pilot program, we will use our hundreds of miles reserve capacity fiber to enable internet service providers to bring fast, reliable, affordable broadband infrastructure to communities that have limited access to high-speed internet. These agreements come together with the multi-year plans ComEd recently proposed to the Illinois Commerce Commission, which, in our view, support the broader economic equity and environmental goals of the region. And with a term of 15 years, the option of a 5-year extension, these agreements proposed today balance the need for sustained investment and long-term planning with flexibility and optionality for the city. I'd like to thank the administration of the City of Chicago for its partnership in getting to this point. We look forward to a continued partnership that brings the benefits of clean, reliable, and affordable energy to every Chicago community. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Quinones. Members of the media, Stephen and I will pass down the mic. 2 questions per reporters. We'll kick it off with Greg Pratt, Tribune.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Can you, there was the Save a Lot is opening in Englewood where the Whole Foods used to be, and there was some criticism from some people, including Alderman Coleman, that, you know, you're replacing a high-end store with a lower-end store. Can you talk about that criticism and what your reaction was to it?
Yeah, look, having spent a lot of time in that community, particularly over these last 4 years, I know that there is a desperate need to address food insecurity. You heard some conversation about that today on the city council floor. It is real and it's profound all over our city, and unfortunately, Englewood is not spared from that reality. Let's question whether or not it made sense in the first instance to put a Whole Foods with prices that most of us that give most of us pause in a community that has historic issues around poverty, around joblessness, unemployment. That would not have been the decision I made. But having said that, when we got notification that, as the Alderwoman well knows, that Whole Foods was going to be leaving that community, members of my team, working with her and key stakeholders in the community of Englewood, worked tirelessly to find an alternative. Number one, so that there would be food in that community from a grocery store, but also so the people in that community could continue to work in that community. And after months and months and months of discussions, of inquiries, we arrived at a solution with the Yellow Banana Company that is opening up grocery stores all across the South Side. And they agreed in a private transaction between Yellow Banana and Whole Foods to take over the lease for that Whole Foods store. Now, look, I've been around this long enough to know, and you do as well, every decision that you make isn't necessarily going to be universally loved by everyone, but I believe that this is the right decision, in part because it fills a void in that community, both in terms of food, it fills a void in terms of jobs for that community, and we are going to make sure that Yellow Banana is accountable to that community. They have been engaged in extensive outreach, including with the aldermen, but also with other stakeholders and people of goodwill in that community, and I'm committed to their success, and I think they will be successful.
Thank you. And you were extolling the virtues of this ComEd deal and the benefits of the ComEd deal. This was obviously a lot of negotiation. There was an RFP process. There was some pressure from the city on ComEd about the deal. Is this a better deal than you would have gotten without all of that process, or is this a deal you would have gotten no matter what?
Well, I'm not sure that I can answer that question, but what I can tell you is this deal was obviously years in the making. We started the conversation with ComEd and frankly the prior leadership team before the deal expired, and then when the new leadership team came in, led by CEO Quinones, we quickly got him up to speed on what our core values were, what we wanted to see out of this agreement. We didn't want to just simply sign a franchise agreement for the distribution of electricity. We wanted to make sure that this was an opportunity for us to transform our relationship on behalf of our residents, to provide them with great benefits, environmentally sound projects in their neighborhoods, and particularly jobs. The old franchise agreement, and no criticism there, was from 1992, but this is something that meets today's needs for climate action, today's needs for making sure that we're creating pathways into the green economy for our residents, particularly those residents who've been most challenged by climate issues. And as I don't like the term win-win, but I'm going to repeat what Gil said. I do think that this is a huge win for our residents and for our city, and it gives us a measure of control and accountability, in part because we're not signing away an agreement for another almost 30 years. So I believe very strongly in this agreement. We negotiated very, very hard. As I think Gil and his team could attest. Literally, up until the last minute, we were still negotiating the finer points over the course of the weekend and Monday, but I believe very strongly in this deal, and I'm confident, as I said before, when members of the City Council actually have an opportunity to read it, ask questions, kick the tires, they're going to see this is a big deal, significant win for the residents of our city, and it's something, frankly, that they're going to be able to go back to their communities and say, we got this done for you.
Just one follow-up. Why don't you like the term win-win?
I just don't like it.
Alice?
There are some things that people say all the time, like think out of the box and other things. They just become trite, and in my mind, they don't really say anything. So I try to avoid them.
Thanks, Mayor. Alice, Tribune?
Hi, Mayor. Do you think there could be any new details or revelations out of the ComEd or Madigan trials in the next year that would make you regret this deal or its timing?
I don't think the two align or are the same. This is brand new leadership. This is after ComEd has signed a DPA, a deferred prosecution agreement, paid hundreds of millions of dollars, are absolutely the sort of Damocles hangs over their head with the DPA in the terms of it in their obligation not only to the U.S. Attorney's Office but to the court. So I don't see these two things as matching up. If you look at the deal on its merits, this is a good deal. We're going to hold them accountable. We've got lots of measures and control in it. And importantly, as I said before, we're doing what's never been done before in the history of our city, which is providing environmental and economic benefits for our residents through a franchise agreement. If you look across the country, and I encourage you to do so, this deal will stand out because of all the components that we have negotiated hard and built into this agreement on behalf of our residents. I can't predict. I'm not currently a federal prosecutor. I'm sure there are going to be things that are learned in the trial, but they're irrelevant as to whether or not this deal has merit and is beneficial to the residents of our city. I'm a strong proponent of it, obviously, and it does. This is, dare I say, a win-win for our residents.
Thank you. And at least one of the aldermen you appointed to City Council is declining to endorse you as he campaigns for a seat. Do you have a reaction to that? And, challengers saying that he and others you appointed are worried about being too tied to you on the campaign trail?
Well, that's not what I hear from them. And look, the aldermen have to figure out how they can win. I appointed people that I wanted to win and come back and serve with me in City Council when I win a new term. So that they need to focus on making sure that they're being responsive to their residents' need. They need to make sure that they're doing everything they can to knock on those doors, fill constituent services, and do everything that they can as an incumbent alderman to win. It does me no good if they don't win. I want a city council that we can work with, and I'm confident every single person that I've appointed, because I speak with them on a regular basis about how they're doing, what their needs are, how their campaigns are going, and so I feel very confident in the people that I've appointed.
Heather, WTTW.
Hi, Mayor. Turning the subject to the death of Tyree Nichols in Memphis. In response to his death, the mayor and the police superintendent there ended the use of specialized citywide anti-gang, anti-violence task forces. Has his death and the video made you rethink the use of those task force and units in Chicago?
His death and the horrific way in which he died made me rethink all of our humanity. Watching those videos and how those officers treated him should give all of us pause. And if we don't take that as a moment to rethink everything about how we treat people, about how we serve people, then we've lost, I think, a valuable opportunity. I don't think any of us who saw the horrific way in which a human being, a mother's child, was treated is not going to remember that for the rest of our lives. And so, of course, we rethink and think about everything that we do. But there's a big difference between what happened in that instance and what we do here in the city of Chicago. And I will not, and I don't think you should, conflate the two. We have to take this moment as an opportunity to think about how we, as human beings, can see each other and value the sanctity of life. Because what I saw was people who didn't value and see Tyre Nichols as a human being deserving of respect, deserving of his humanity, his right as a human being. And I hope and believe that justice will be served. Those officers should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Certainly one of the questions I have is where in the world were the supervisors? That's the supervisor's responsibility, and they should not skate on this. They should also be held accountable. We saw bystander officers come into the scene as well. What were they doing, and why did they not intervene? It gives us, I think, an important opportunity to really lean into what our values are as a city, as human beings, making sure that our police department understands what their responsibilities are, and that they have to view the residents of this city with respect, because each and every one of us are deserving of respect. That's what I think about.
On the campaign trail, you've been talking about the city being in compliance with 80% of the consent decree. It's in compliance with 80% of some level of the consent decree, in full compliance with just 5% of the consent decree. Is that good enough for you to take to the voters and ask for a second term in office?
Well, I think what the voters want to know is that we're actually making progress. I think what the voters want to know is that prior to the time that I became mayor, we were in dismal straits with regard to the consent decree. I think what the voters should know is that we are further ahead in our time under the consent decree than any other city and a comparable time. I think what the voters want to know is, by the way, we now have 40 hours of mandatory training for our officers, going from basically zero training when I led the Police Accountability Task Force. So we've made tremendous strides over the course and arc of this consent decree. There's more to go, obviously. That's why we urged and supported the extension of the time from 5 years to 8 years. But I think under this superintendent, with the commitment that I have made personally, but also with the commitment that has been made by the men and women of the Chicago Police Department to hold themselves accountable, to reform themselves from the inside out, I feel like we are in a good place, on a great trajectory, and we will continue to make important strides in reforming and accountability of our police department, something, as you know, I've devoted a significant amount of my professional career to.
Mariah WBZ.
Hi, Mayor. You were initially pushing for February 7th for the council to come back, changed your mind, let it be March 15th. Can you say why you changed your mind, and will you urge...
I believe that there's a way in which we can make sure that the council gets itself educated without having to go through all the formal parliamentary maneuvers. The biggest and most important thing is the document is filed. It is now formally before the City Council. It will be heard before a joint committee of the Committee of Finance and a Committee on Environment. I think Chairman Wagasbeck in particular understands that he needs to do the work to make sure that his colleagues have all the information that they need, that all of their questions are answered long before there is any vote. And I'm confident that he, leading that effort, along with Vice Chair Nugent of the Environmental Committee, will do just that.
Do you commit to, since this isn't a massive deal coming from your administration, do you commit to calling for subject matter hearings as Alderman Garza?
Whenever somebody says to me, do you commit, I always take a step back. What I am committed to, as I have been committed to from day one, is to make sure that the members of the City Council have all the information that they need prior to the time that they take a vote. And that may manifest itself in a lot of different forms, and I think we've got to let the council decide how it is that it wants to get information and hear from the principal actors related to this very important franchise and EEA agreement. And we will work with members of the council to determine what is the form in which they want to get that information.
Craig Dellamore, WBBM.
And good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Let me follow up on Mariah's question. How concerned are you that even after the briefings, some of which were longer than others, that there are aldermen, and it's not just Sadlowski Garza, who felt that they weren't getting questions answered, that they weren't hearing enough yesterday or this week?
Look, I think we have an opportunity based upon this first round of briefings, as we always do, to come back, take a list of questions, and make sure that we're being responsive to the aldermen. An introduction is not a vote. An introduction is a formal start of a conversation. And there's going to be a lot more steps that we will travel, obviously, before we get to any kind of vote.
And can I ask CEO Quinones a question? Obviously, you have taken over a utility that is trying to come out from under an ethical cloud. And you heard the skepticism on the floor of the city council today. What does ComEd have to do to regain the confidence of not only the city council, but the people who are going to be watching these proceedings?
Well, about almost 3 years ago, the company took full responsibility and accountability for what happened. As the mayor described, entered into a deferred prosecution agreement with the Department of Justice and paid a $200 million fine. But I think what's more important to note is that the company has implemented sweeping reforms internally, organizationally, process tools, training for each of our 6,200 employees. Today is about talking and presenting to you this historic franchise agreement, first of its kind in the nation, that I believe will advance our shared goals with the city of Chicago in battling the climate crisis, in making sure that we can integrate more renewables into the grid, foster electric vehicles and electrifications of building and homes, enable a just transition, address equity issues and issues of energy justice and climate justice, as well as spur local economic development and the creation of clean energy jobs.
Aaron, Daily Line.
Good afternoon. So the franchise agreement is being eventually assigned to the Joint Committee of Finance and Environment, and as you know, it's Sam Nugent who's the vice chair. At this point, can we assume that you won't be assigning new chairs to any of the committees that don't have them?
I don't think you can make an assumption. We will continue to move forward on the substance and business of the City Council, and should there be a need to make any adjustments in committee chairs or otherwise, we'll do it.
What does that need arising look like?
I'm sorry?
What does that need arising
I can't tell you one size fits all.
Okay. And did the new Office of Climate and Environment Equity that was created under this year's budget have any involvement in the franchise agreement, and what is its involvement going forward?
They negotiated almost every word that's in both agreements. This has been an ongoing process, as I said. The people who are standing here, Angela Tovar represents a group of individuals that are part of that office who've been hard at work for several years to sketch out the terms of the agreement and negotiate, I think, historic first of its kind in the nation, equity agreement with ComEd. They've been deeply, deeply involved. We didn't just start this work on January 1st when the new office was formally created. We've been hard at work. They were the ones who helped us draft the RFI, all the formal correspondence that's gone back and forth between the parties, and then sitting at the bargaining table, making sure that our vision for a new kind of deal that provided for equity, that address climate needs, environmental justice, and jobs, jobs, jobs. They have been leading that work from day one.
Marianne, NBC.
Mayor, can I ask you your reaction to Alderman Tunney supporting Paul Vallis today?
I think their views are probably very closely aligned.
Would you?
But what I'll say is this. Paul Vallis is an interesting person. He is playing into people's fears of public safety, but actually not being honest about what his record is. And his record is this. He touts the fact that when he was a budget director sometime in the 90s, and let's say what's on his campaign page, 91, 90, 91, 92, that he is the great savior of public safety in this city. Well, the truth is that when he was the budget director, the homicide rate was at 851 homicides in 1990. And then the next year, when he was still budget director, the homicide rate went up to 927. And then the next year, when he was still budget director, it went up to 940. Each of those years, far worse than what they are now. And by the way, his knowledge and bona fides around public safety, they're coming from John Cantizara, the bigoted, racist head of the FOP. Paul Vallis is one of only 2 people that actually sought the FOP endorsement, the other being Willie Wilson, and we can talk all day about him too. But the fact is that he has embraced an ethos of the right wing and the FOP that is antithetical, I think, to the vast majority of voters in this city. And so anyone who aligns himself with that person, Paul Vallis, who has wrapped his arm around the FOP leader, John Cantizara, and has him whispering in his ear on public safety and fear-mongering the way that he does, I think most voters are going to recognize that is not a person for us. The other thing is, Paul Vallis talks about a plan for safety for all of us, but apparently that doesn't include the women and girls of this city. This man is anti-choice, no question about it. Because if he wasn't, a core value of being a Democrat, which he says he's a lifelong Democrat, which also is not true, but a core value is standing up for choice, for women's bodily autonomy, and making sure that in this time, particularly given what the Supreme Court did in Dobbs, that we are very clear and unequivocal that we trust women, that we support women, and that we will be a city that stands for justice for all. And making sure that women in this city and others who are coming here have the ability to access reproductive health care services. But that's not who Paul Vallis is. For 257 days, up until there was a women's forum, Paul Vallis, who is Mr. Word Vomit on Twitter, said not one word about choice, bodily autonomy, or anything that respected the rights of women. 360 tweets between when the Dobbs decision was leaked last May and when the Women's Forum happened a few weeks ago. Not one word about women or choice. And why? Because he doesn't believe in women's choice. He doesn't believe in abortion rights. He doesn't believe that women should have bodily autonomy. And so there will be people who align themselves with him. Their values are going to be more aligned with him than mine, and are going to be more aligned they're not going to be aligned with the vast majority of the people in the city. Lying about his record, embellishing, saying that the Department of Justice hired him on criminal justice reform when what they hired him to do was improve GED rates for prisoners. I think the voters are smarter than that, and ultimately I don't think that they'll be fooled.
I'd like to ask you as well, in the early morning hours, we have had our news crews notice a very strong police presence on Michigan Avenue, even during these days of below zero weather, noticing up to 20 cars up and down. Some are asking if this is the best use of manpower.
When there's a potential for a threat in our city, you bet it is.
Is there some kind of a threat that we should know?
We were making sure that there were no adverse consequences related to what we were seeing in Memphis, but also other cities. So we believe in being prepared. We believe in protecting assets. And it's not just Michigan Avenue. I want to be clear. We were protecting commercial corridors all across the city. from the time that we got notification that those videotapes would be released, and then, of course, when they were released. I think people in the city expect the police to be proactive and make sure that we're protecting people, property, and businesses, and that's precisely what we're doing.
Sarah Schulte, ABC.
Hi, Mayor. Are you concerned about this ComEd deal if the outcome of the election is not in your favor in February?
No, I'm not. First of all, the outcome of the election will be in my favor, 100%. I'm very confident in that. But I also believe that I will be the mayor for the next 4 years, and we're going to get this deal done because it's a great deal for our residents.
And then just, this is not my second question, but it's attached to that question.
Oh, no,
because but one of your competitors, mayoral competitors, calls the deal suspect because you've received campaign contributions over the years from ComEd.
So that would be Mr. Garcia, who, by the way, just took $10,000 from a senior executive of ComEd, who then hosted a fundraising event for Mr. Garcia at his law firm, where other former ComEd individuals gave donations. So people that live in a big glass house should be really careful throwing stones. And look, I can appreciate why Chuy Garcia wants to try to change the subject and wants to try to attack me, because he has still not given account for the fact that he has engaged in unholy alliances with indicted Mike Madigan, former speaker, who orchestrated the ComEd scam, pay for play, pay for no jobs. So he doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that his name is showing up on federal wiretaps. He doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that he continued to stand by the disgraced, now indicted former speaker when the storm clouds of the federal investigation and the Me Too scandal that led to 19 members of the House saying no more. None of the people that are part of Chuy Garcia's organization were part of those 19. Why not? Ask him that question. So he's going to try to change the topic any possible way he can, because he doesn't want to be held accountable for being like a Trojan horse, dragging corruption from the former indicted speaker, from the crypto king that's now indicted, and the red light camera scandal, knocking on the door of City Hall. And what the voters of the city should say to Mr. Garcia and his corruption and his attempt to turn us back to the bad old days of machine politics: no thanks, no one's home, go away.
This is from my colleague Craig Wall, who it's about the Vallis endorsement. How critical do you think the white lakefront liberal vote is in your reelection?
I think every vote that I can get from any neighborhood in the city of Chicago is important and critical, and that's why I'm fighting hard everywhere I go to make sure that people remember and understand how we have delivered for them over and over and over again over these 4 years, but also to make sure that they're aware of the fraud that's being perpetrated on them by people like Paul Vallis.
Justin Cranes.
Hi, Mayor. Back on the ComEd deal, can you explain, why it's better to send that shareholder payment, up to $120 million, into a nonprofit rather to the city itself? What do you believe is the benefit of that? Are there any potential pitfalls that you're worried about going that route?
I'm going to refer to a CEO because there are some legal considerations that went into that particular construct in the agreement.
We believe that it is the best vehicle to balance the optimal deployment of those funds to advance our shared goals on number one. Number two, to balance it with transparency and accountability and controls. So that's what we believe is the best structure for that $90 million.
I'm going to also ask our Chief Sustainability Officer, Angela Tovar, to add a little more color to that.
And just to layer onto that, Justin, for us, it was really important to create a structure of accountability here. Within that nonprofit, there will be a board that will be appointed by. The mayor will appoint the board, and it will be approved by City Council. In addition to that, that board will have full transparency to the public. They will be required to subscribe to the Open Meetings Act, and they'll have their meeting minutes posted online. So we wanted to make sure that as we were making this, as the board was making these critical decisions related to the $100 million and the money that was going to be doled out to community groups, to local businesses, to sister agencies, to the city, that we had a group of independent decision makers that were there to review the proposals, and that there was full transparency in terms of their decisions. They are also going to be required to provide annual reporting as well.
And then on the, the West Side building, the job training center, the $32.5 million thing. So we're reporting today that is, ComEd is seeking to pay for that through ratepayers. This is not through shareholder payments. This is something that they've asked for through the ICC previously. Why is this being included as part of this deal as something that's been negotiated rather than something they've already asked for and is just kind of being tacked on to this deal?
Well, I'll start, and then I'll invite CEO Quinones to start. What's different is that we have structured this in such a way that we're going to make sure that local residents in particular, and particularly those residents that have been most impacted by climate issues, have a pathway to make sure that they get the training that leads to good jobs. That is, I think, fundamentally different and why we are frankly excited about this opportunity.
Yep. Yeah. And that training center on the west side also, there is a need for skilled workers to effectuate this energy transition. That is a known fact. In fact, study that we've made project that the energy transition will need at least 40,000 net new jobs by 2030 to really advance this. So there is that need. That's why we included it in this plan. What's different is that the city wanted to make sure that we make investments where they can have the most impact. And making an investment on the west side, training up to 10,000 workers during this term can be really a game changer in that part of our city.
I'm sorry, just a thought. Have you already bought the building? Is the building already located, or are you still searching?
Not yet. Not yet. And by the way, I also just want to add that it's not just ratepayer money. We are jointly seeking for federal and state funding. Federal funding from the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, and also funds that are going to be available from CEJA, the Climate Equitable Jobs Act.
Mayor, Mr. Quinones, thank you very much. It's a wrap, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.